Welcome back. I saved some tea for you. I'm glad you visited again. Now, let's go with episode 2 of What If Saitama Showed Up in My Hero Academia, shall we? Oh, and if I sound a little bit strange, it's because I'm still recovering from being sick, so I apologize. Saitama strolled through the city streets, his hand buried deep in his pockets. The familiar feeling of latex on his skin felt nostalgic. He hadn't worn the hero uniform in a while. He'd been keeping himself busy with training Izuku and warehouse work. Work in reality being finish quota in under an hour, play pretend, and look busy for the rest of the shift. He'd hoped that by now he'd finally have his hero license, but the only progress he'd made was getting a work permit. Afterwards, he was forced to walk through the muddy swamp of a process that was getting a driver's license. Man, what a pain that was, he thought, replaying a moment from a month earlier. A DMV examiner with thinning hair and thick glasses looked down at his clipboard, squinting at the paperwork. It says you failed the on-the-road tests 5 times. He'd adjusted his glasses nervously. If you fail again, you're going to have to pay a fee. Again. Saitama's head twisted towards the examiner, an eerie smile spreading across his face that made the DMV employee visibly shiver. I guess that means you should be passing me with no issue this time, right? The drive went smoothly. Saitama's reflexes were perfect, his parking flawless. However, as they approached a red light behind another car, the examiner readjusted his glasses and muttered under his breath, 5 centimeters too close to the other car. Careful, you could hit someone. Saitama's hand gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles conveying frustration. That's when he noticed movement ahead. A man stepped directly in front of their vehicle. Fiery whips materialized in his hands. Step out of the car and no one gets hurt, the carjacker shouted. Saitama calmly stepped out and approached the criminal. Man, I'm doing my driving exam. You should be considerate of others. The villain's grip tightened on his burning whips. Just shut up and give me your car, bro. Without hesitation, Saitama intercepted the whip with his right hand. No burns, no visible pain, just mild annoyance. He then casually launched the man high into the air. Shortly afterwards, not too far away, the criminal landed directly into a parked police cruiser. Crash. 2 officers sprinted out of the nearby station. One dropped his bag of donuts, the other spilled his coffee. They stared at the ruined car. Son of a... Saitama slid back into the driver's seat. So, we good? The examiner, trembling, looking toward Saitama, and nodded frantically, quickly crossing out the 5 centimeters notation on his clipboard. As he strolled into Main Street, Saitama continued with his thoughts. And now I have to do a live scan to prove I don't have a criminal history? You know what? I can be a hero without a license. That's when he heard it, the sharp wail of alarms echoing from a nearby bank. There's my cue. Oh, before I go, Saitama reached into his pocket and pulled out a red headband he'd recently bought for work. I should put this on. He wrapped it around his bald cranium. Cool. Let's see if it absorbs all the sweat. A man burst through the glass double doors of Takeda Bank, his face hidden behind a black ski mask. As he stumbled out, he tossed his hostage, a female bank clerk, to the side. She hit the rough tile floor hard, scraping her knees. I ain't gonna make it, the robber muttered to himself, turning around only to run straight into Saitama. Get out of my way. The criminal sloppily drew his handgun. Saitama calmly placed his hand on the firearm. As he slightly tightened his grip, the firearm broke as if it were cheap plastic. In the distance, he could hear a black van, revving its engines before speeding away. Inside the getaway vehicle, 2 masked men weaved through traffic. The driver, gripping the wheel tightly, honked aggressively as he sped between cars. Honk, honk. Hey, Toma, you should look at this, his accomplice said nervously. Honk. Can't you see I'm busy, idiot? His friend let out a frightened shriek. Toma glanced back and saw Saitama's head sticking out of the car floor like a bald-headed nail, smiling menacingly. What is that? Toma spun the driver's wheel in panic. The car began to shake violently, and both robbers screamed in terror. Saitama casually walked back to Takeda Bank, where an encirclement of police cars had gathered. He simply dropped the entire getaway van in the middle of a police perimeter with a light thud, then approached the bank entrance. "Are you all right? Anyone hurt in there?" he asked the clerk. The woman, dressed in casual work attire, finished applying a bandage to her scraped knee. She then looked up at him. "No, it was just me who got roughed up, but still, you're amazing. What pro hero are you?" My hero application is still processing," Saitama casually replied. The clerk glanced back at the police officers who were deep in discussion. One held a notebook, asking questions. "You should go. You're a hero, but the Hero Public Safety Commission doesn't take too well to vigilantes. You might end up in prison." Saitama, reflecting on his first encounter here, snapped his fingers. "Ah, that's right. Well, maybe I should get a disguise. Oh well." He removed his headband and examined it. Not a drop of sweat. Guess this thing doesn't work. "Whoa, that was a good disguise," the clerk exclaimed suddenly. Saitama looked at her, his eyebrow rising. "Huh?" She placed her hand to her chest, excitement in her voice. "It's like you went from a wandering karate master monk whose headband signified his school, and now your vibe is different, like a hero you'd seen knocked out before All Might shows up." Saitama put the headband back on, still confused. "You should keep that on till you get home, Mr. Hero," she advised with a smile. Later that evening, Saitama entered the Midoriya residence to find Izuku and Inko sitting at the kitchen table, both beaming with excitement. "Saitama-san," Izuku jumped up, practically bouncing. "I got accepted into UA Academy." He thrust a letter towards his mentor, his hands shaking with enthusiasm. "Hey, that's great, kid," Saitama replied with a small smile. "Told you the training would pay off." "And I made a friend at the entrance exams," Izuku continued. "His name is Satoru, and he should be here any minute, actually." Inko clasped her hands together. "I'm so happy you made a new friend, Izuku. It's wonderful to see you coming out of your shell." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Izuku rushed to answer it, returning with a brown-haired teenage wearing glasses and a green plaid shirt. "Saitama?" the newcomer exclaimed, his eyes widening in shock. "You're in this world too?" Saitama blinked, tilting his head. "Whoa, that's crazy. I wasn't the only one. I can't believe, it's me, Mumen Rider." "What? But you look younger than my phone. What happened to you?" "I don't know. There was this golden light and..." Satoru began. "You were transported into a weird black void with colored streaks going through it," Saitama finished. "Exactly. Do you know anything about that place?" Saitama shook his head. Inko and Izuku exchanged glances. "We thought Memory Riper scrambled Saitama-san's brain," Inko admitted sheepishly. "We doubted him up to this point. It's still hard to believe. But if you two knew each other before..." "Mumen Rider?" Izuku asked curiously. "I bet you were an amazing hero, Satoru." Satoru rubbed the back of his head. "Not really. Most times, I was near death." Satoru straightened his posture. "I'd say this world is a lot more stable." Saitama nodded along as Satoru continued. "One day, you could be out on the town, and a 3-headed dragon would start fighting a giant gorilla or something, and an entire city would be destroyed. Yeah, and one day, you might get a weird ninja guy stalking you because you matched his speed," Saitama added casually. Izuku's eyes were wide with fascination. "Did most people have quirks over there too?" "I didn't have powers originally," Satoru explained, "but it seems like anyone could develop them. Some got them through training, some were born with psychic abilities. Maybe that carried over to this world. I got strong by training with Saitama, and it seems you did some sort of training too, Satoru." Satoru responded, "But He stopped before he spoke further, a memory of All Might asking to keep the fact he was his new protege a secret. "Think you might be right." "I will say one thing," Saitama added. "The Hero Association may have had messy control over things, but I never got swamped with paperwork or hassled for being a vigilante." That's because monster attacks were so common. The Hero Association was glad they didn't have to send another asset into the meat grinder. Satoru replied grimly. Izuku shuddered. Sheesh. Inko, wanting to lower the tension floating around, spoke up. Well, boys, how about we go eat somewhere nice to celebrate both of you boys getting into UA? Satoru's expression became more cheery. Thank you for treating me. The next day, Saitama found himself strolling through the city once again, this time deliberately patrolling in his disguise. The same yellow jumpsuit and cape, but now with the red headband wrapped around his head. He still doubted if this really hid his identity. As he wandered down a side street, he heard a commotion echoing from a nearby alleyway. Curious, he approached and spotted what appeared to be a fellow hero or vigilante in trouble. The hero, who seemed to call himself Shroomman, was being mocked by a duo of thugs. One wore a freshly pressed white suit with a red tie combination, while the other was a mountain of a man lurking behind him. You think you're some kind of hero, Mushroom Boy? You look like a grocery store mascot. The white-suited Yakuza thug sneered, raising a baseball bat threateningly. Shroomman responded by drawing spores from the air, causing the Yakuza man to stumble and stagger. He then delivered a solid punch that sent the suited criminal staggering backward, the baseball bat rolling out of view. Well, go get him. The Yakuza man barked at his companion. My vision is all trippy. Get him before I start seeing the machine elves. The large man lumbered closer to Shroomman, who attempted the same spore technique, gathering particles to daze his foe. But the large man just laughed, activating his quirk to transform his entire body into gleaming metal. Shroomman looked devastated as his power proved useless. The metallic giant drew back his fist, ready to crush the vigilante. Saitama considered intervening, but from the opposite alleyway entrance, a woman suddenly appeared. She had pink hair, her bangs completely covering her eyes. With her skull print shirt, she wielded an electric guitar. She played a powerful riff, and a blinding flash of light erupted from her instrument. Everyone froze, except her. She quickly dragged Shroomman toward the exit. Let's get out of here. But as the duo approached the alleyway entrance, the metallic man slammed his fist downward, shattering the ground and causing both the woman and Shroomman to trip and fall. The woman attempted to create another flash of light, but the large man adapted, changing his body's properties to glass. Instead of being stunned, he reflected the light back, blinding the girl instead. Maybe I should stay this way, the glass man taunted, his transparent form catching the light menacingly. Make it easier to cut you up. That's when Saitama stepped into view, positioning himself directly in front of the villain. And for me to break you, he said with his usual deadpan delivery. The glass man quickly reverted to his metallic form. Just try it. Okay, Saitama replied, delivering a casual punch that sent the metallic man flying through the air like a Saturday morning cartoon villain. The Yakuza thug immediately dropped to his knees, hands clasped together in desperation. Please, please don't hurt me. The woman struggled to her feet, still supporting Shroomman. No, don't let him go. They're scum. They hurt Shroomman. He's a well-respected hero. Just look at how bruised up he is. Shroomman stood forward, his voice weak but determined. That's right. They're too dangerous. A tremendous crash echoed through the alley as the metallic man landed in a nearby garbage container. Garbage container, creating a small crater on impact. Shroomman took one look at the destruction, then at Saitama, and promptly ran away in terror. The Yakuza man's pleading intensified. Come on, man, look, His eyes suddenly fixed on Saitama's red headband. Look, I can get you a better one of those. Could I see your headband? Saitama casually removed it and handed it over, causing the girl to watch with curious interest. So, heard of Gucci? Versailles? You heard of those brands, right? Do they absorb sweat better? Saitama asked with a genuine interest. Yeah. The Yakuza man lied desperately. Saitama's eyes perked up with interest. Sure. You got a business card? The criminal quickly handed over his card and bolted from the alleyway as fast as his legs could carry him. You let him go? The girl exclaimed in disbelief. Hold on a bit, Saitama replied calmly. Moments later, they watched as police officers apprehended the Yakuza man the instant he reached the end of the alley. The girl stared at Saitama with a mix of confusion and fascination. That man, without his red headband, he looked so goofy. I thought he was some kind of karate master, but he's so freaking powerful and chill. Too chill. A light bulb suddenly went off in her head. Wait, you're Saitama, that guy who blazes through our shifts at Amazonas. Saitama's mind raced. Did I screw up? I seriously, the headband thing is genuinely a great disguise, but why? He cleared his throat nervously. But before the conversation could continue further, Saitama started backing away, hands waving frantically. Gotta go. Bye. And with that, he disappeared around the corner, leaving the woman staring after him in bewilderment. While Saitama was on vigilante duty, Izuku and Satoru were attending their first day of UA Academy. Eraserhead stood before Class 1A, his tired eyes scanning his new students. He prepared to evaluate their quirks through a series of physical assessments. He had threatened expulsion to those who underperformed, but in reality, he only said this to motivate them. The first course to judge your abilities is a simple, short distance run, he announced in his characteristic monotone. Line up. Students began filling into position, some stretching, others activating their quirks in preparation. Tenya Ida adjusted his glasses. His engine's already beginning to rev. Ready? Go. Ida shot forward like a rocket, his engine quirk propelling him across the track in a blur. The AI-controlled tracker announced his results. Eraserhead remarked, Impressive. I don't expect anyone to follow up that record. Next up after Ida was Izuku. Eraserhead watched with particular interest as the green-haired boy took his stance. There was something different about this one, something familiar. He knew he had seen him before. Izuku settled in the same position he had always taken at Stanley Memorial Park, his nerves calming. It was just another day of Saitama training. Go. Izuku exploded forward, leaving a faint trail of dust as he darted forward. Eraserhead spoke up. Same record as Ida. Impressive. To think we'd have 2 speedsters this year. Ida's eyes widened behind his glasses. This was unexpected. He seemed to approach Izuku, but before he could take more than a step, You bastard! Bakudo's voice cut through the morning air like an explosion. You had super speed this entire time? You hid your quirk for what? Just to mess with me? He grabbed Izuku by the collar. Izuku stammered, caught off guard by the sudden confrontation. But, Bakudo, That's when a firm hand landed on Bakudo's shoulder. I don't know what happened between you and Midoriya, Ida said, his voice carrying authority. But you've gone far enough. Bakudo's grip loosened slightly, and he reluctantly released Izuku, though his glare remained fixed on his childhood rival. Ida turned to Izuku, his expression softening. Congratulations. I hope this makes up for how I treated you back at the entrance exam. Izuku scratched the back of his head. No worries. As the tension lowered, Satoru and Ochako approached their friend. What's with Bakudo? Ochako asked, glancing at the still fuming blonde. You shouldn't let that guy mess with you, Izuku, Satoru said firmly. I don't know what Deku means, but it's meant to be insulting. Izuku explained quietly. Short for Deku scrubs. They were weak little guys from this old game. Ochako's face lit up with recognition. Oh, I love that game. Those Deku scrubs were cute. I don't get how it's insulting. The hero's first form was a Deku scrub, but he gets through the first level and gets stronger. It kind of seems encouraging. Izuku blinked, processing his new perspective. Huh, you think so? If you put it that way, I actually don't mind it. Satori grinned. Alright then, Deku. Besides, you'd be able to handle him easily. The words hung in the air for a moment before Bakudo's head snapped around, his eyebrow twitching, his teeth clenched. What did you say? Did I hear that right? You think that loser's quirk is better than mine? No, Satoru replied calmly. He doesn't even need a quirk to beat you. Actually, that was the boiling point. Bakudo lifted his palm, and pure rage overtook him as he let out a massive explosion aimed directly at Satoru. But Satoru was ready. He crossed his arms in front of his face, channeling one for all through them. However, what have you done, Bakudo? Eraserhead said, his quirk already activated to prevent further escalation. Look at his arms. Gasps echoed from the gathered classmates as the smoke cleared. Satoru-kun, Ochaku exclaimed, your arms. You gotta get checked out. Satoru's hands and arms were ashen gray, the skin discolored. It's fine, no worries, Satoru said, flexing his fingers experimentally. If you remember back at the entrance exam, my entire shoulder was gray and withered away. That's right, Deku added. When you took down that Titanic robot. Yeah, things are different now, Satoru continued with a small smile. It's just gray looking this time. No bones damage. I can still use my quirk in my arms one more time. That punk didn't win. Eraserhead stepped forward. His eyes narrowed as he examined Satoru's arms. After looking the arm over, he verified that, despite the discoloration, there were only faint burnt marks beneath. He even poked to see if Satoru had a reaction. In any case, Bakudo, Eraserhead said, his voice carrying deadly seriousness, if you do anything like that again, you'll be expelled. Bakugo clenched his fists but managed a fine. Saitama sat in the warehouse break room, absent-mindedly eating a meat kebab while staring at the hanging TV. He watched a program where a group of teenagers and a dog surrounded a ghoulish-looking man dressed as Santa Claus. Well, gang, time to see this home invader's true identity. Let's remove the obviously latex masks. One of them said. Just then, a girl, sporting a long pink ponytail and Amazonia's employee hat, stepped directly into his line of sight, blocking the screen. Hey, you're blocking the TV, Saitama protested. They're about to do the big reveal. A man's blood-curdling scream echoed from the television, followed by an uncertain, I guess he was legit. Like, zoinks, we really do need to call someone. Like, seriously, right now, man. Saitama sighed. Never mind. The pink-haired coworker smiled. So you do work here, Mr. Hero. Do I know you? Saitama asked, tilting his head. Remember that fight with Shrooman against that big metallic guy? Saitama pondered for a moment. Well, sounds familiar, he finally said with a shrug. The pink-haired girl removed her hat and let her hair fall, the bangs covering her eyes. Oh, you're that girl. Yeah, I remember. What about it? Why did you just up and leave? Why didn't you give your account to the police? Saitama stayed silent. You're a vigilante, aren't you? Saitama looked at her steadily. What of it? You gonna blackmail me? No, she said, leaning forward with intense interest. I want in. Let me be your sidekick. And if I say no, then I'll snitch. So you are blackmailing me. No, just think of it like, once we go out as a duo, if one of us sinks, both of us sink. Got it? Saitama raised an eyebrow. Why do you want to be my sidekick? The girl's expression grew more serious. I never could be a hero. My quirk is just, I can make audio and visual illusions, but since I can't fight, I could never get accepted anywhere. My backup plan of being a rock star is not going well either. At least this way, I can sort of fulfill one dream. I'm not good at fighting, but my quirk is very, very useful to have around. Saitama nodded slowly. I guess it would make escaping as a vigilante less fussy. Very nice backstory you got. And to be real, I could totally transition that vigilante identity into an underground rock career. It'd be very punk. Saitama couldn't help but crack a small smile. Can I ask the name of my rock star blackmailer? It's Sadayo Moria. Time had passed. It was now further along in the semester at UA Academy. A long black-haired student, Suyu, swam gracefully through a body of water. her frog quirk making her perfectly suited for the aquatic environment. As she froggy pedaled in her green bodysuit, her mind drifted to a memory from a recent bus ride. She remembered getting up from her seat and taking the one near Satoru. Say, Satoru-kun, your power is a lot like All Might's. Satoru had scratched his neck nervously. Oh, really now, huh? Tsuyu had also looked across towards Deku, tilting her head curiously. Yours too, actually. It's like both of you have the same power, sorta. Super strength and speed. Though Satoru's is more explosive, but Deku's is more consistent. She had continued studying them both with her large, curious eyes. I wonder, she had said, causing Satoru to sweat nervously. Satoru, are you and Deku related? Satoru had laughed awkwardly. No. We just both have augment quirks, you know? The memory faded as Tsuyu continued swimming, now dragging a glassy-eyed Mineta along with her. She climbed up a ladder onto a ship, her powerful legs propelling them both onto the deck. Upon landing, she laid out Mineta in front of Satoru and Deku. Mineta looked completely out of it, his eyes unfocused. Tsuyu knelt beside him and slapped his face a few times. Wake up. We might need your help. Mineta's eyes widened, his eyeballs darting around. Mommy, is it safe now? Still disoriented, Mineta stumbled towards the ship's railings and looked downward into the water. What he saw shook him to the core. A bunch of villains in the water below, staring up at them menacingly. They seemed to be waiting for their chance to attack, like sharks circling an injured seal. Mineta immediately ran back to Tsuyu, his entire body shivering with terror. What does it matter if I'm up? We're doomed. The League of Villains is gonna wipe out everyone. All of our classmates will be killed. Get a grip, Tsuyu said dismissively, pushing him away from her with one hand. Why aren't you freaked out, Tsuyu? Mineta asked desperately, his voice cracking. Tsuyu turned back and looked at Deku and Satoru. They appeared to be deep in discussion, strategizing their next move. A smile formed on Tsuyu's face. Because, she said with complete confidence, we got 2 All Might Juniors here. So running that back again, what's happening is, Satoru began reiterating what he and Deku were discussing to Tsuyu and Mineta. The League of Villains somehow broke into the USJ training facility while we were supposed to be doing rescue exercises with All Might, Aizawa-sensei, and 13. Deku gestured towards the water around them. Our class got scattered in different zones, and we're stuck here in the flood zone. It doesn't seem they planned too far ahead on where to scatter us, otherwise Tsuyu wouldn't have been sent near the water. Tsuyu responded with, That's true, Ribbit. Satoru then added, and from what that hand-covered guy said, Shigaraki, they're specifically targeting All Might. They expected him to be here today, but he's running late. Tsuyu interjected quietly, which means Aizawa-sensei is facing them alone down there. Satoru looked between Deku and Tsuyu. We need to figure out how to get past these villains, regroup with the others, and somehow help our teachers before this gets any worse. Mineta whimpered, It's all hopeless. No, Deku said, determination in his eyes. We have a chance. They don't know our quirks or what we're capable of. They're just swimming around, unsure what to do. Tsuyu tilted her head. Her finger scratched her chin. Any ideas? Deku's mind suddenly flashed back to a memory he had. It was of the public swimming pool he and Saitama visited after training at that park. He remembered that Saitama chose to go in just a Speedo. Gazes were averted as he approached the diving board. Deku was near the ladder and dared not look up as Saitama ascended. That's when it happened. Saitama swan dove onto the pool. There was only an old woman in a pink bathing suit there. When Saitama had landed, the impact turned the pool into a massive geyser, water spiraling upward in violent currents. Fortunately for the old woman, the force of the water geyser had propelled her in the direction of Deku. Deku was able to smoothly catch her as she fell. Oh, dearie, did you see my dentures? Deku shook his head. After he had done that, a pair of dentures plopped neatly into his outstretched left hand. What a nice boy. You did find them. Deku couldn't help but shiver at the memory. Why was Sensei wearing that anyway? You okay, Deku? Suyu asked, noticing his change in expression. Deku shook his head quickly, refocusing on the present situation. Yeah, I got a plan. Determination returned in his eyes. Izuku huddled the group together, quickly outlining his plan in hushed tones. After a few moments of whispered strategy, he pulled back and looked at each of them. Got it? Yeah. Everyone responded in unison to Deku, though Minato's voice wavered slightly. Suyu's large eyes fixed on Deku with curiosity. Your sensei really could do something like that? Satoru nodded. Believe me, he can. Deku can pull this off. Minato swallowed hard, his hands trembling. Okay. Deku turned to face the purple-haired boy directly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Despite Minato's usual perverted and cowardly tendencies, Deku saw something greater within him. Minato, Deku said, trying his best all-might impression. I'm counting on you. You'll be our ace. The weight of that responsibility seemed to increase Minato's morale. Someone believed in him for once. Izuku took a deep breath and positioned himself at the edge of the boat. Without hesitation, he launched himself into a perfect swan dive, channeling the technique he'd observed from his mentor. The moment his body struck the water, the effect was immediate and devastating. A massive water spout erupted upward like a geyser, sending torrents of water in all directions. The villains who had been lurking beneath the surface were caught completely off guard. Some launched into the air, while others were swept away by the churning currents. Now, Satoru shouted. He activated One for All through his legs, power surging through his muscles as he dashed forward across the churning water surface. Suyu and Minato clung to him for his support, using him as their transportation across the chaotic aquatic battlefield. Minato, now! Satoru called out. In his panic, Minato began frantically plucking his pop-off orbs from his head, sloppily dropping them into the water. He didn't focus much on placement, but it didn't matter. The sticky spears scattered across the surface, creating a field of traps that the disoriented villains couldn't avoid in their confusion. As they reached the far side of the flood zone, Suyu's tongue shot out. As if her tongue were cast off from a fisherman's pole, it caught onto Deku and fished him upwards. Ribbit. This makeshift crew left the villains stuck floating together, chained in an aquatic pop-off orb prison. The four then wadded their way through the waters, swimming slowly so as to not attract attention. They knew that their teachers were in trouble, so they swam to the central plaza, where they could get a good vantage point. However, as they got closer, they could see two figures in view. A lanky-bodied man with strange detachable hands all over his outfit. He was taking pleasure in watching a muscled, unnatural creature pound his fist into Eraserhead. Eraserhead was driven to an unwinnable corner. He was grounded and continued to take blows. A puddle of blood beginning to form and leak towards the water. As the blood flowed in the direction of Deku and friends, they could only look on in horror. Suyu not only had to restrain her shock, but she had to decide in a split second what to do next. Satoru's heavy breathing, furrowed brows, and tightened fists. It was clear he would jump in at any moment. Minato's shivering was reflected in the water. She decided to clutch Satoru's right arm and look towards Minato. She pressed a finger to her lips in a swift hush gesture. However, this caused Minato to swim towards her and attempt to hug her. When he placed his hand somewhere he shouldn't have, she pushed him away. Minato dramatically sank himself into the water in an exaggerated response. When he rose back up, he noticed that the other three had a concerning look on their face. When he followed their gazes, Minato could see the lanky-bodied man looking right at them, laughing. If All Might won't show up, we'll make use of his students. Let's leave a gift for him. Shigaraki lunged towards his target, his open palm about to reach Suyu's face. Once contact with Shigaraki's hand is made, all organic beings begin the process of entropy, to decay, to rot. Yet, no you don't. Satoru's right hook, infused with One for All, was sent out. However, that unnatural bird-faced creature, the Nomu, moved Shigaraki aside and blocked his blow. In reaction to this, Deku charged forward, tackling the Nomu. Shigaraki didn't remark on almost being hit. He stood there, awestruck that the Nemu was being pushed back, physically pushed back. Deku was moving him as if he were a hauler hired to push a refrigerator. After processing this unbelievable feat, he dashed towards Deku, right hand facing forward. Forgot me? Satoru rushed forward, his left hand infused in green aura. Before he could get too close, however, a black portal appeared below Shigaraki, and soon Shigaraki stood next to the shadowy Kurogiri. We made a mistake. That green-haired boy was not within our calculations. Shigaraki looked back at him. Yet you almost compounded that mistake into two. That other boy's quirk is lethal. One touch like yours, and it's over. This is a game of chicken, and I'm giving you the advantage. Keep this in mind. Shigaraki silently nodded. Shigaraki and Satoru now stood across each other, neither making sudden movements. It looked as if they were in standoff between cowboys. Their hands at their sides, at the ready. The only firearms the two possessed were their fists. Shigaraki with his decay quirk, Kurogiri not too far behind him, Satoru with one for all, Tsuyu and Mineta floating in the water behind him. Shigaraki dashed, making the first move. Satoru smirked, infusing one for all into his already ashen gray legs. Shigaraki's eyes darted downward, seeing the green aura. Then he disappeared. Uncertain of where he went, Satoru ceased preparing energy to his legs. Suddenly, Satoru felt something manifesting behind him. It was too late. He didn't have time to use his quirk again. He knew he was in danger. Shigaraki's only felt air. He could feel as if there was a movement above him. He looked up. Satoru dropped down, freed from Tsuyu's tongue. Thwack. When Satoru landed, he had unloaded a punch into the newly created black portal. Satoru looked to Shigaraki's new location. He saw that a gust of wind, caused from the force of his punch, emanated from this new portal. It caused Shigaraki to collapse on the ground. Crash. Shigaraki's upper half rose. That won't work again. He sank into a newly created black hole. Tsuyu riveted. Ribbit. Her tongue wrapped around Satoru. Melon. Mineta's gaze went back and forth. He tried to follow along in the fight between Satoru and Shigaraki. Keeping track of the last portal manifestation or the trajectory of Tsuyu's tongue, he figured if he were going to help, perhaps Deku's fight would be easier. He could see the Nomu rushing down Deku with the fury of punches. After a wave of these punches, Deku landed a quick jab on the Nomu's face. Thwack. The Nomu flinched and unleashed another round of punches. Deku had the speed to keep up and dodge. Yet, thwack. He barely hurt the Nomu. It seemed routine. Another wave of Nomu's fists came his way. Deku landed a jab and attempted to transition into an uppercut, but thwack. Deku had been propelled to the edge of the platform. On his knee, breathing heavily, the pain stung, yet he couldn't stay in its position for too long. The Nomu made an inhumane grunt as they charged Deku. Deku closed his eyes. Deku, keep punching him, declared Mineta. Deku saw what happened. The Nomu had been trapped mid-charge, pop-off orbs at the heels of his feet. He breaks these so fast. Punch him, I beg you, Mineta said while he tossed another orb from the top of his head. Deku took a deep breath. He responded with a volley of punches of his own to the Nomu. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Soon, the Nomu stopped trying to break free of the pop-off orbs, lest he be whittled down by a stream of small cuts. Kurogiri glanced at the fight between Deku and the Nomu. This is absurd. That kid can hold down Nomu's attention. He examined further. Deku's breaths between punches were heavier. His eyes darted back as he created another portal for Shigaraki. He was able to get a glimpse of the girl who challenged him in this repositioning chess match, Tsuyu. Her eyes were drooping downward. Her tongue seemed drier. This will just be a speed bump. Once they're exhausted, they'll good assets for us to control. And if we can't, the sound of doors slamming echoed through the entirety of the USJ building. A voice could be heard throughout the entire facility. Have no fear. Students all over the building looked upwards in admiration. For I am here. It was All Might. Shigaraki muttered under his breath. Oh, guess we gotta continue. When he finished this thought, he could feel a wave of pressure coming his way. All Might had charged his way to the center platform, knocking out whatever villain stood in his way. Shigaraki gazed on the newly arrived hero as he held onto severely damaged Eraserhead. Shigaraki shouted to Kurogiri, "Get Nomu over here." All Might had to drop down Eraserhead as the Nomu dropped down to his position via portal. All Might leapt and grappled Nomu, surplexing him further away from his injured friend. All Might expected this to be over and stood up. Yet the Nomu had quickly recovered, as if he had only taken a scratch. The two began to exchange blows. For every 3, All Might landed. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Nomu landed 1. Thwack. There was no strategy here. All Might figured he could wear the Nomu down before he could be worn down. Shigaraki, who could only comment from afar, as the force of their blows would only push him back. He was made to destroy you. His shock absorption means your punches matter less than his. All Might then realized he had to switch to dodging blows instead, and aim for counterpunches. It was going as planned, but the Nomu prepared for a counterpunch. But as he attempted to knee All Might, he could feel a kick. Toe. He saw Deku, his kick causing him to temporarily flinch and miss the timing. Thwack. All Might's counterpunch worked. Deku had turned this into a 2 versus 1. Shigaraki's eyebrow furrowed, but before he could move forward, he turned towards Satoru's direction. Satoru's eyes conveying, "You move, I move." Shigaraki chose to stay put. All Might bobbled and weaved, evading the Nomu's punches. Whoosh. All Might prepared a counterpunch, which the Nomu predicted. Deku came in, stinging like a pesky bee, and fluttering away. This disrupted the Nomu's momentum. All Might's counterpunch hit. Whack. Even the Nomu, a creature with his brain exposed, could tell this fight should not stay this way. As this chain of events repeated, he instead predicted Deku's arrival. He grabbed his right leg and leaped back. All Might, unsure how to gauge this green-haired protege, was certain of one thing. This kid seemed hurt. He had been fighting this thing the entire time he was missing, but he knew this kid couldn't take hits from the Nomu. All Might tapped his reserves. Plus Ultra. He dashed forward and jabbed the Nomu before he could do anything to Deku. Whack, whack, whack. The Nomu dropped Deku. All Might continued with a series of jabs and hooks. Whack, whack, whack. The Nomu's head spun around. He was dazed. All Might took this time to wind up his next punch. Utica uppercut smash. Whack. The Nomu had been sent out of the faculty's ceiling. Crash. As if he were being rocketed off into space. As the dust settled, All Might scoped the area around him. He could see that Shigaraki and Kurogiri had descended downwards into a portal. One less thing to worry about. He then looked towards Deku, who was awestruck. All Might motioned his fist into the air to signal to those around him of his victory. Deku smiled. I would have used up more of my remaining time left with One for All if it were not for this boy. He held that beast up until I arrived. He has this much strength already and has room left to grow. All Might spoke up to Deku. Boy, if I recall correctly, you are Izuku Midoriya. Yeah, that's me. All Might began to stumble around. The after effects of going beyond his usual power, Satoru had run in to stabilize him. All Might thanked Satoru. Young Midoriya, I feel that you require guidance. Your potential is exceptional, and I wish to mentor your growth. Deku rubbed the back of his head. Sorry, I already have my sensei. All Might was shocked. I don't want to sound full of myself, but who is your sensei? You would turn down the symbol of peace? Satoru chimed in. I wouldn't worry about it, All Might. His sensei. Believe me, you couldn't ask for a better mentor to train under, besides you, of course. All Might took in Satoru's statement. He pondered for a bit. I suppose, if you vouch for him, young Satoru. Deku then questioned, Whoa, you have All Might's respect, Satoru? How did you get to know him? All Might and Satoru then began a bout of awkward laughter. All Might answered with, I have simply seen the justness of his character from the times I've seen him at the local soup kitchen and the disabled puppy storytime reading events. Satoru added in with, yeah, Fido really did enjoy when I read Dr. Seuss to him. Their laughter was off-putting, but Deku was so trusting, he accepted their answer. Mineta, for whatever reason, arrived and began joining in on their laughter. Suyu simply tilted her head, and the two new arrivals to the scene. Well, Bakugo, it seems the situation has already been handled. You're right, Todoroki. We get no chance to show off. When the laughter ceased, All Might managed one more statement before leaving. Young Midoriya, tell your sensei I said hello. He is welcomed any day at UA Academy. I look forward to meeting a powerful hero with upstanding character. Meanwhile, at a local shopping district, inside a clothing store that specialized in alternative wear, Satoru Moriya exited the dressing room. So, Saitama, how's the fit? I like the denim jacket with red plaid skirt look, but what do you think of the Hello Kitty pins paired with the Japanese flag patch and cameo skills? Does that give off a punk? Or is the purple skirt with the metal chain of Labubus, topped with metal band patched leather jacket do better? I'm going for kawaii punk. Saitama sat at his chair, his vacant face reflecting back on the mirror, the J-Rock causing audible tremors through cheap speakers. The Hello Kitty skulls with the flag give off patriotic punk rebel feelings, yeah. Sadayo's eyes glimmered. You're so right. This look does have aura. Saitama sighed and thought to himself, are we finally going on patrol? We've been here for hours. I just scrambled together whatever keywords she gave me. Sadayo shuffled around and looked at herself through the mirror. Say, does this make me look fat? Saitama's eyes widened. Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully I didn't sound too different. I'll keep up with the cough drops and Advil. Next part will be in a month or so. I'll see you for your next visit.